Hayling Seafront Strategy, Developing a Regeneration Ambition. So, Councillor Satchwell, would you like to introduce your report, please?
Thank you. I'll just do a short introduction before I refer to officers. So, in very simple terms, we are on a journey, and this journey has had many stops and starts over the year. But it's one that there's a lot of energy and eagerness to get started on. What I want to make really clear is what is in front of you is a draft. We are not seeking at this stage to turn this draft into a published document. We are merely seeking to get the draft out there so we've got something to start the conversation with. In my mind, it is absolutely essential that we allow members of the public to be heard and for their ideas to be included before we form our final ambition. So our ambition is for change. Our ambition has had input and has some expert opinion. But what really matters is that we take people on our journey with us. So what we're hoping at this stage is that this paper, when it comes before Cabinet, it will be approved in a way that allows officers to take it forward and to get feedback from members of the public. Those that know Hayling Island will know that members of the public have already made their voices heard, as if we're putting through very clear proposals, and we're not. So I would urge you to look at it in the manner that I have proposed it, which is that, again, and I will reiterate, this is a draft. We're not looking to approve that draft at Cabinet, merely to move it forward to the next stage so that we can have something that can bring forward the change that's very much needed.
Thank you, Councillor Satchwell. One second, Councillor. Did you want to say anything at this stage, Ms. Chester?
Thank you. I'm happy to run through the paper very briefly if it helps the committee members just to get a feel for the detail of the paper. Would that be useful? Yeah. So very briefly, as Councillor Satchwell set out, there are actually 3 recommendations to Cabinet going forward. The first one is to note work underway on the broader Hayling Seafront strategy. That's the work that's been going on for some time that Councillor Satchwell is leading to look at a holistic, comprehensive way that the council, stakeholders, partners, residents, businesses can develop and cherish the whole seafront. The second bit is the part that Councillor Satchwell was just referring to. We're asking Cabinet to endorse the documents as a draft such that we can go out and engage and consult with stakeholders and a range of strategic partners as well, including bodies like Natural England, the County Council as well. And the third bit is to approve the development, so again to begin the journey, to start to look at some new branding for the island, which will support any particular drive around investment as well as stakeholder engagement. That will also form part of the engagement piece. So the paper sets out, as Councillor Satchwell said, what an important cherished place Hayling Seafront is, but also a set of challenges, a dynamic coastline, something that changes daily that we all know well about, a number of environmental designations which are what makes it special, but also make it complicated. And the strategy that's being developed going forward is trying to work with a range of stakeholders, as I say, including local residents, businesses, but also those key partners as well, to look at how we can all work together to make Hayling the place it wants to be. The strategy then goes forward to talk about the piece particularly around the draft document which we presented in front of you. As Councillor Satchwell mentioned, the draft document is a draft. It's built on work that was done over the last few years, including some earlier work done to support the local plan as well. And it does set out an early draft ambition to be a happy, healthy and vibrant place. There are 7 or 6 different areas, including environmental areas and greening the seafront, a vision to create an exciting and modern seafront, a strong marine offer and a strong brand as well. Importantly as well, infrastructure, not just the Billy Trail, but ways to get in and out of the island will be really important. So without going into more detail, but happy to support on questions, there are 3 parts, as I say, and it's really, as Councillor Satchell said, very much that start of that journey. We're really keen to engage with residents, businesses and those stakeholders to take this draft vision, refine it over the next few months, and then bring something back to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Chester. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Satchwell? Yes, Councillor Francis and Councillor Kennett.
I've got quite a lot of questions.
Can we have one at a time, Councillor?
One at a time, right. So, one of the first things that is being recommended in this draft is the idea of developing high-class residential apartments on the site of the amusement place. Now, this does worry me because there is great evidence about the rising sea levels which will destroy some of the island, and this will be a very, very vulnerable spot. And so I'm anxious about that. And in addition, I am anxious because with the branding of the island and all the rest of it, parents do like to take their children to places where there are rides and all the rest of it. And we must think about replacements for that.
Councillor, is there a question there? I
Well,
heard your anxiety.
The question is, have you thought about these matters?
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Francis.
Thank you. And I don't know if Claire will have something else to say. So inclusivity is at the heart of everything that we have to do. And I think, as you'll notice as the document goes through, where it calls out, lots of people have opinions about Hayling is for older people, or Hayling is for this type of person. And actually what we're trying to say is Hayling should be for everybody. So I think that's one thing, and I hope I can assure you, I spent 2.5 hours on Friday with some residents who were concerned about everything. They were concerned about similar items that you've raised, but I did explain to them, there's one thing with the fair, for example, we don't own that piece of land. We aren't able to control it, and we're not able to control the number of visitors that goes to something privately owned. So there's an element of commercial viability for people who own land and things like that. So naturally, there is going to be change. What's important is that we do understand what residents believe is required. And if we go back to why I became a councillor, I think it's that very reason. A train shed was built. I didn't believe it was inclusive. And so those lessons are something that I will make sure that we're always asking and making sure we're reaching a wide range of people so we get the answers. And also, this isn't a planning application. So the idea that there is, whatever might go at the site of the fair, that at the moment is kind of suggesting ideas rather than being something specific. So, and also it helps us understand people's views on those things. So it's not a planning application, and it is not, the specific thing. So it's to start the conversation at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kennett.
I appreciate that the train is only just leaving the station on this particular project, but are you able to give us any indicative timescales, even at the highest level at this stage, for kind of where we're headed?
I think that's probably a better question for the other Claire.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm probably going to disappoint you in that it's difficult to at the moment. I mean, we're hoping to assume Cabinet approve the paper in September. We'll launch the engagement and the consultation, and we need to give that proper time. So our first task is to do that. I would hope that over the autumn we will be able to do that process and bring something back in a revised form sort of early part of the new year. But in terms of actual delivery on the ground, that's a tricky question. And I think what will run parallel to that engagement is a delivery plan. I think we talk about that in the paper. That delivery plan will start to include timescales. I know members, Councillor Satchell has said, really keen to start seeing tangible change on the ground, but we need to balance that with giving people the time to comment, reflect and think about it. So I think it is a delicate balance. So sorry, that's not a clear answer, but it is work over the next few months that we'll be refining and come forward with a timetable.
Thank you. Councillor Seal.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is, I'm all for having lots of people down there. It is a beautiful place. They have got beautiful beaches. With the more people coming down there that you envisage, and more toilets and more facilities like that, have you spoken to Southern Water what they intend to do about the discharge they seem to keep putting in around that area? I mean, with children and that, it's very vulnerable for them. Have you sort of confronted with Southern Water what they intend to do about their regular discharges, I believe, into the sea around there? Thank you.
I think this is a subject Councillor Lloyd knows well, but it's probably out of the scope of what we're talking about today. I'll briefly say it's out of the scope of what we're talking about today. In my role as cabinet lead, we are going to make some changes that make it easier for people to make informed decisions on the beach. But I'll stop there because otherwise I'll take us off in a whole other journey.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. I've got a question, then it's Councillor Hughes, Councillor Francis. So first of all, I'd like to say that I really enjoyed reading the detailed presentation on the draft opportunities and vision of Hayling Island, so thank you for that. This report has come to scrutiny ahead of item 9 on the Scrutiny's work plan, for which we were advised a report was in the making. Now, just to remind you, that's about the decision not to intervene on the effects of climate change and the sea on the coastline. Can you update members on that matter? And I'm asking it, Councillor Satchwell, because my question really is, how viable is this ambition document, given the seafront's vulnerability and the fact that it's very dynamic, as Ms Chester's already alluded to? And then secondly, if I may, that leads me on to ask if there are any elements of this programme that need to be done first and quickly. We're just talking about times and, quick wins or first opportunities because of climate change and its effects, for example, relocation of beach huts. Thank you. Sorry, there's a couple of comments, 2 questions. Are you okay with that?
I probably will come back to you for help.
Okay, thank you.
Remembering. So if we look at, if we're talking about West Beach and we're talking about what's coming forward, so there is a lot of work going on and a plan to bring forward a paper that specifically looks at the West Beach issues. Uncertainty beyond what we already know are uncertain about, I guess, creates lots of questions in itself. And so what we're trying to do is to make sure that what is brought forward as a proposal for next steps answers the questions that I hope the people who made the decision 20 or 30 years ago would now feel that were fair. So we're actually taking the time to really make sure that rather than just go, right, let's take drastic steps very quickly, we're understanding what the different options are. So I think, and also what we need to understand, West Beach is incredibly important because it's loved particularly by the water sports enthusiasts, it's loved by the horse riders, it's loved by everybody. But it isn't the only thing. It isn't the only part of Hayling Seafront. And so what came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's very difficult to get these two to line up. And so I feel very strongly that if we look at this draft ambition, it's creating, I guess, helping us get to a North Star of where we want to take the seafront. And that can only help when we're looking at West Beach. So when we're looking at things like what we might build on West Beach, for example, or not West Beach for the avoidance of doubt, but further back, that's part of the decision when we decide what we might need to protect. So this, so I think, does that answer your question?
If I'm honest, no, but I understand you're dealing with a dynamic area. But really, I think I would like to understand, I'd like to understand the decision that has been made. I believe it's been made. You haven't made the decision to not intervene on the beach. The report is coming. Is that true? What is the situation with that? Because I think the two are inextricably linked, and without understanding that, it's hard for you and officers to be able to implement any items on your wish list, your draft ambition. The ambition is great, but it is a wish list, isn't it? And there are many, as you say, dependencies, many of which are out of your control, like land ownership and the receding beach. I also take your point that West Beach is not all Hayling is about. And I did take Councillor Pike's advice, and as I hope other members did, which I asked you to do, which was to go and have a look around Hayling. And I particularly enjoyed looking at the Chichester Avenue Road, Chichester area, and so on. So really, I think they are inextricably linked. And I think from members' points of view, that will always come up. So maybe you and I can talk outside of this meeting about that report, but is there anything you can tell members today that you can do relatively quickly? I know this is a draft, I know it has to go to cabinet, I know it's a wish list and it's a lovely plan, but are there any things you've got irons in the fire for? Who's got their microphone on? Anyone? I'll take.
So can we say a decision's been made? No. What we can say is there is absolute commitment, I believe, that we need to do the right thing. And we know that there's, sorry, was there a question, Councillor? Was there a question, Councillor Hughes? Oh, sorry, I thought I heard you say something. So when we look at it, we need to do something, but for the sake of rushing and taking the advice of officers, we need to look and make sure we're doing the right thing. You asked about beach huts, for example. So when we look with regards to the relocation of beach huts, we had nearly 50 empty spaces for beach huts, for example, in our existing estate. So that means that the majority of beach huts can be relocated without having to add additional sites. So it's about balance constantly, and it's also not being too selfish to think of now. We've got to think of the future, and that's not just the beach users, that's financially, because it is people in this borough that will have to pay for the decisions we make. So they're not taken lightly. So when something comes forward, it is likely to be a request to proceed with the best recommended idea, and within that there will be a cost for engineers to take that forward. So that's likely to be what you see, because even that stage is expensive. So we have to be mindful of that as well. So
okay, I've got a supplementary there, but I'm going to give way because Councillor Hughes is on the list, and then Councillor Francis with questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Cards on the table. I read this with utter dismay. I read this as a complete reboot, throwing everything we've done previously and collated previously out of the window. So I would like to know how much the work we paid for the Mason fabric consultations is the first question.
Before I'll go to officers about that. So this is not new work that has been commissioned under since I've been in Cabinet. This is work that has been before Cabinet historically, is my understanding. So this is no new money has been spent. And that's part of that is, if we've come up with a starting point historically, if we keep coming up with new starting points, we're never going to move forward. So the idea was to say, right, we've got a starting point, we've got a view, now it's go to the people, and they're the ones that really matter. And so what we need to do, and so money was previously spent, as I say, not since I've been in Cabinet. So we haven't decided to let's rewrite loads of stuff, let's spend loads more money. Let's actually go with what we've got and get moving, really. So as far as how much it's cost, that will be how much it's cost under a previous administration.
Thank you. Councillor Francis.
The Seafront strategy is, of course, tied to the transport situation. And really and truly, we need a clear understanding of that before, do we need a clear understanding of that before we can go ahead? The present road, obviously, is not good enough for the present residential population, and we're building a lot of new houses. So is it the view of the strategy that we're looking for people who are staying for a week or 2 weeks, something like that, rather than our day visitors? And when there's talk of the Hayling-Billy line, are you all aware of how precious the Hayling-Billy line is, particularly the mainland part, to the people who use it day by day? And does this strategy indicate that you're going to make it more of a sort of motorised area? Thank you.
I think, again, we'd kind of drift off into the transport addendum, which is a specialist subject of mine in my previous life. But with regards to this, I think this recognises that the Hayling-Billy line is very important, and also it has a wide range of users. It is important for a lot of issues. I'm not going to drift off into the local plan. One of the things that I always like to remind people is Hayling is an island, and I don't mean to be patronising when I say that. And a lot of the visitors arrive and know that. The same with West Witterings. People go to West Witterings knowing there's a single road there and a single road back. They know they're going to sit in traffic. So that's something that I think is understood. It is something that will need to be considered, I think, and again is something that we have had raised by residents already, understanding, are we looking to attract more visitors? Are we looking to have the visitors that come have a better experience? So I think it's about balance, and so that's what's interesting at the moment, because we'll be able to find out and go into more detail on those in this.
I'll just add, if I may. I mean, your points about transport, absolutely. And the county council as a highway authority are already working with us, but we'll be one of those key partners that we want to start engaging with. So one of those early discussions will be with them, potentially Highways Agency as well, about the junction with the A27. So absolutely, transport's going to be critical. I think the vision definitely that I have is not to necessarily increase numbers, but to increase what we might call dwelling time. So your point about actual consumer spend, how long people spend there, and actually what they spend and contribute to the local economy is really important. So this isn't about flooding the place with lots more people. This is about the quality of the experience and the contribution that they make to the place and to the economy. And absolutely, I'd echo what Councillor Satchwell said about Hayling-Billy. It's a jewel in the crown. It's a real asset, and it needs to remain so. You'll be familiar with some of the work that Councillor Pike worked on previously for the Havant regeneration strategy, looking at potentially some long-term ambitious plans for autonomous vehicles or something very exciting. But actually, at the moment, it's really, while we look at that as well, focusing on walking and cycling and enhancing the facility that we already have.
Thank you. Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Chair. Are you looking for commercial investment into this plant? And if so, how do you think you go about getting it?
I'm not actually going to answer this, but I'm going to say this is why this document is so important, because without the vision, there will be no interest. And without the interest, there'll be nothing will move. The train won't get out the station. So I'll pass over to Claire, who maybe will better give you a bit more information about the funding trust.
Well, I was going to say, are we looking for commercial investment? Yes, please, if you've got some. So it's always very welcome. But I think, you know, there needs to be a funding strategy. You're right. The idea of regeneration is not just about new buildings. It's about people. It's about places. It's about excitement and creating opportunities. And part of that is about generating investment from the private sector as well. So one of the tasks that Councillor Satchell has sent me and the team is to make sure there is a funding strategy that supports this work. How is this all going to come to be? It's not about costing the whole thing and pounds and pence. It's about stimulating the private market to invest. That might just be a local shopkeeper who feels excited by the prospect and wants to improve the front of his shop. It might be a larger developer wanting to come in and invest some money and build a new development. So, I mean, yes, we will be looking for that. That's part of that strategy.
Councillor Brunt.
Thank you. I do actually, think this is a very good start. I mean, I've been going to Hayling for well over 50 years, so, I took my children there when they were young, so I know what the experience of Hayling is at the moment. I'm just really wondering how you think you're going to lengthen the season, because I think at the moment it's very much a summer place, isn't it? People go when there's sun. And when there's no sun, then there are less people. So it's looking for activities, I'm sure, that, and how are you going to be looking for activities that extend the season even through the winter? And how much are we looking at local places? I mean, you mentioned West Wittering. I mean, the new cafe at West Wittering, is the sort of thing we would love to see on Hayling. And I don't know if you've looked at Mutton Cove at Plymouth, which has got little paddling pools, little fountains that come up. That sort of thing would, be really nice for people to take young children. So sort of ideas from other places, certainly on the beach.
I think certainly when I saw the ambition document draft, I was like, oh, what about this? What about that? And, had probably a million ideas. And so, for example, an idea that Councillor Pike and I had talked about was saying, well, actually, yes, it's important that we have these strong centres, but actually things like Chichester Avenue that Councillor Lloyd raised, we probably have the least exciting and not best toilets in the world there. And so there may be an opportunity to have something that's more accessible, because that's really important. So it might be an opportunity to have a cafe that means that people can more easily get a sea view without having to worry about the stones, for example. So it's those kind of ideas that we want to come forward. And also we've been looking at deliverability. And so sometimes it's the smaller ideas, once there is kind of a framework of ambition to know where we're heading, because what we don't want to do is to come forward with ideas and do things too piecemeal, and they don't contribute to the overall kind of end game, as it were, because the problem with that is we end up stopping ourselves from doing anything. Like, you can't paint the doors of something or change the bins, or all these little things add up and join together. So we want to make it easier, and also to make sure that we get better value for money, because officers are clear what we're looking to do. So they're all ideas that I hope that if we go out to consultation, you'll provide, and I'm sure others will come up with ideas, and then I think it gives us an opportunity to look at them. But
thank you, Councillor Satchell. You have a supplementary, Councillor Branson.
A different question. You haven't included the ferry area in this, and also we talked about the Hayling Billy, but of course that goes down Langston Harbour. I'm just wondering, involving that aspect into, I know we're looking at the seafront, but when you're looking at the offer on Hayling, there are other bits that aren't in this, but I just wondered how much that could possibly be incorporated in the future.
So the ferry, my other specialist subject in my spare time. Again, a lot of it comes back down to, when you're looking at the swathes of land, the land ownership where there's a big part of the seafront that's owned by the golf course. So that does affect, when we're looking at it as a kind of connected space. So I don't think anything is ruled out if it's part of our seafront. And I know that, it's connecting things together, and also also, again, it comes back down to accessibility, inclusivity, and safety as well. You know, that's why I think the Hayling Billy line is so important as well, because if you want to come in an environmentally friendly way to the seafront, there's no better way than the Hayling Billy line. So for me, I think ultimately we're talking about the Hayling seafront in its broadest sense, but I think this does try and look at the area that we kind of, I guess, are able to make the biggest difference.
Thank you, Councillor Satchwell. I've got some questions now, and then Councillor Hughes is going to have questions as well. My first question concerns this brand, creating a brand for Hayling. Now, I believed that Haven't has a brand. It's a brand that worries me grammatically, but I'll put that aside. That is, have something with haven't. Now, are we saying that Hayling needs its own brand? And if we are, is the reason either to promote this ambitious draft wish list to attract inward investment, or is it to attract more visitors? And I think the answer to that is probably no, because I believe we've had bumper years, but you know, you'll tell me whether that's correct or not. Or another reason. So on the brand, can you answer those? On transport and the Billy line, we all appreciate that Billy line. I've walked it many times, and I'm not a natural goer to Hayling for some reason. But when we talk about the Billy line, are we extending our horizons, which could be in this draft, this ambitious wish list, whereby perhaps we look at a park and ride scheme? Because yes, I agree, walking along the Hayling Billy or cycling to go to the beach to Hayling is done now. It's a very safe and environmentally friendly way to go. But surely the most number of people that go regularly or visit in the season or for windsurfing or whatever go by car. And we have that perennial issue of, can the bridge take all this traffic and so on and so forth. So I'd like to see a bit more joined upness here with regard to our climate change and environment strategy, which says, have we got any land on the mainland or on the top of the island that could then maximise in the future autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, but in the shorter term, see some electric minibuses running every 20 minutes or whatever. And I can't see that in here. I don't know whether I've missed it. So it's the brand, it's the transport. And then thirdly, if I may, Councillor Satchwell, I get mine all out at once. On deliverability, is there anything that you can tell this committee and therefore members that we can see happening ahead of a date somewhere in the future after your consultation? Thank you.
So the brand. So, well, lots of people, when they think of brand, they think of the Saatchis and Saatchis that spend ages.
Councillor, can I just say, I'm mindful we've got a very large agenda, so let's keep it concise.
So, but what we're talking about here is simplicity. You need to know that you've arrived. You need to know that you're connected to something. So, what we're talking about is a font, first of all. We're talking about Hayling Island written in the same font in multiple places. Now, you would think we have that already. We absolutely don't. The signs along the seafront, some of them have been there longer than I've lived there, which is 47 years. And so what we're talking about is connecting things together. We've worked with our own internal team to choose a palette of colours, for example. So these are colours that the council can buy paint in. So if we're going to paint something, it gets painted in this palette of colours. The final thing we're looking at is having some kind of image that we can use and connect to economic development. So this is where we might have the welcome sign to Hayling, for example. But then if Hayling Hardware, who does a great business in Hayling Island tea towels, wants to put it on a tea towel, they can put it on a tea towel. Someone wants to put it on a mug, so that what we have is something that has value within our community, and something that when people are driving along the seafront, they see the Hayling Island sign and they recognise, hopefully, a sign of quality and all of this. So it's that subconscious. We're not looking about dramatic, changing the world and coming up with some big thing. So that's what brand is.
Okay, I'd just like to say I find that very useful, interesting and positive. What I didn't want to hear, which I'm pleased I haven't, is that we're going out to some consultant to come up with a brand. So I'm very grateful to you for that explanation, and it all makes very good sense to me. Thank you. I'll let you move on to the Hayling Billy.
So
So, Madam Chairman, I wanted to intervene as infrastructure tends to come to me. So I think you're absolutely right that all of the different things have to be in alignment to make progress with them. And clearly, transport is for the most part a county council responsibility, particularly passenger transport. And we want to work closely with them to make progress with these things. As Councillor Satchell says, we have the transport addendum, which is a strategy for investment in the A3023, and clearly the first planning application has been approved, and that can start progressing, and I'm already working with officers to start progressing towards that. But I think there's much more we can do. So, for example, I'm going to be bringing forward in September a review of the parking charges and permits, particularly on the seafront, because that's a way of encouraging people to do the right things. If we want people to arrive at certain times, or the stagger times, and or even say to use electric vehicles rather than diesel vehicles and such like, there are things we can do, and absolutely we should be doing them. And if we can make all of our different things line up, then we've got the best chance possible of making that change. So absolutely, we want to do everything we can as a borough council to encourage alignment of all these different strategies, and if members want to get involved in any of those things, I'll be very happy to have them involved. But I'm seeing particularly parking and parking permits as being one of the really obvious tools that could take us in the right direction.
Thank you. So that's a no to a park and ride scheme.
No, well, I think we can't mandate it. It would have to be the county. Only the county council can approve and put in such things. We have looked at that as a strategy, but I think there are other things we could do with the buses, certainly, and I'm going to be meeting with Stagecoach to talk about that, because we've had some very productive meetings in the past looking at this and encouraging the county council who actually have the levers with these things to try and pull some of those levers to make progress on them. So absolutely, now is the time to do that, so we're ready for next summer.
Thank you. And sorry, when you just spoke about elements of the major road, is it the A329? Forgive me.
Yeah, 3023.
3023, sorry.
Yeah.
I've never been any good with road numbers.
You remember with great fondness the addendum from
so this is the
18 months ago.
The pull-ins
so
and things like that.
In essence is a shopping list of the things that we believe will make a difference to that road. Clearly, the planning committee approved the first major application at Sign the Lane a few months ago, and as those contributions start flowing, so that application is probably about £2.5 million in total in contributions for various things, the majority of which will be transport. Absolutely, what I would like to see is those things being put in as fast as the money arrives, and that's what officers are working with the county council to put in place, that sort of implementation plan.
Great, thank you. So I take from that, if I may, Councillor Satchell, those are definitely some deliverables: the parking strategy, permits, the Hayling Island transport assessment, quicker wins that we know are in the tube now. So I'll let you off that unless you have another deliverable to tell us about.
Only very quick things like improved signage, just the things that people can see, because what we need people to do is to have a relationship between the ambition and what they see happening. We want to build excitement and fit people to feel part of that. So, and that will be through, like we say, paint colours, signage and simple things.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I believe that economic success of Hayling Island, particularly from a tourist front, necessitates a stable West Beach. The only thing that seems to have moved in respect to Hayling Island in the last 3 years is the beach huts and the revetments. Nothing else has moved. Do you believe that this strategy may identify the best optimised solutions to deliver what you keep saying is to doing the right thing? And if that doing the right thing means identifying that a precursor to any economic success is a stable West Beach, will the Cabinet look upon that favourably?
So officers are working together. So Coastal Partners are working together with the regeneration team. So I guess it depends what comes forward. If you're looking for my personal opinion, I feel that there is widespread support for making sure that we understand the situation that we're in, and that the right solution is properly costed and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, so I think, I've spent a lot of time going through this, and I know that Claire Chester is working with Lyle Cairns as well to make sure that the two align. But they do have their own separate issues relating to this. So, but there will be something that moves forward, but we just need to make sure, because there are not necessarily alternatives, but as with most of Hayling, we've done everything once. We've probably had more master plans over the years. We've had more ideas. And so it's looking at the work that's happened in the past, and actually maybe some of that should have come forward, and it hasn't. So what we're trying not to do is, I don't know. So I don't know if that answers it. Anything to add?
Only, not specifically you commented on the West Beach, Councillor Satchwell, but only to say that I do think my professional view is there are still a wealth of opportunities along the whole seafront for regenerating and enhancing it. And as I said at the beginning, of course, what makes it unique in terms of that coastal dynamics is also what draws people to it and its charm, but it makes it really challenging. So the process that Councillor Satchwell set out for me feels the right one. But alongside that, we don't have to wait for that. The whole seafront gives a whole wealth of opportunities, and including some of the things we just talked about, those early deliverables, to start making a change and building some excitement.
Thank you very much. I know this isn't a planning application, and I know it's only a draft, but when I look at the opportunity to develop housing out of the areas marked 4 on the map on page 51, would we have any ambition as the planning authority for such development to stick to our climate change and environmental friendly ambitions for the borough, whereby we would insist not only on the use of natural materials for these homes, as in the wannabe photos, but also the most sustainable and green forms of heating and hot water provision. And I'm just thinking, are we going to have a whole joined up thinking about Hayling with the climate change and environment, as well as the dynamic coastline? And for example, would we, as part of our ambition, at least be able to expect to see, for example, on the south-facing locations such as this, solar panels? Can you ever envisage that being part of this draft, Councillor?
About whether it be part of the paper, I think I'll refer to Claire Chester. As far as whether we, one of the things that I think does come through is that we want to complement the environment rather than work against it. So I think that hopefully comes through in the ambition document, but I'll refer to Claire Chester.
I think the answer is yes, we need to look at all of those things. It will be part of it. And I think coming forward after the consultation engagement, including with statutory authorities, including with our planning authority colleagues as well, we would come forward with some of those more detailed plans. So yeah, as Councillor Satchell said at the beginning, this is the beginning of that process. I would love to see all of those things being considered.
That's very good to hear. Councillor Francis?
Yes. Are we really encouraging people to stay overnight in cabins, sort of beach cabins? That has always been a sort of anathema, I think, in Hayling.
We might be. We don't know. That's the exciting thing. You know, genuinely, we might be. We're seeing it along the coast. We're seeing people want more staycations. Who knows? But that's the exciting bit. So at the moment, we don't know. But that's something. It'd be really. I'm genuinely interested to see what people think.
Thank you, Councillor Satchwell. Members, are there any other questions for Councillor Satchwell? Does any member wish to debate this item?
Could we know whether this will be reported to the Cabinet or whether we just go?
I don't know, Councillor Francis, whether what we've discussed or asked at this meeting will be reported to Cabinet. I would imagine it will be in the minutes of this meeting, broadly speaking. But I think, as Councillor Satchwell has pointed out on more than one occasion, this is not something to hang our hats on at the moment. It's more a cloakroom, shall we say. The hat pegs are yet to come.
It's difficult to recommend something.
Well, no, as no member wishes to debate the item, I can move to those recommendations so we can be sure what we're actually being asked to vote for. So if we do move to those recommendations, they are as follows. And please bear in mind the point I made at the beginning of the meeting about what we're here to do. So members are recommended to note the update on work underway to develop the Hayling Seafront strategy. And I think we've asked some questions, many and various, on that. To endorse the draft ambition document to enable delivery of a programme of stakeholder engagement and consultation. Yeah. And to approve the development of a new brand, which Councillor Satchwell's very clearly outlined the meaning of. So to approve the development of a new brand for Hayling Seafront to form part of the programme of stakeholder engagement and consultation. So, do I have a proposer for those recommendations, please? Councillor Scott. And a seconder? Councillor Branson. By a show of hands, all those in favour? Thank you. All those against? And anyone wish to abstain? Thank you. Ms Harding, can you announce the result of that vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. The vote is carried.
Thank you, Councillor Satchwell and Councillor Chester and Councillor Pike. Moving on. Members